Santham Academy. Welcome to Digital Kaksha. To get updates on new videos, click the subscribe button and the bell icon.
Good morning to you all. In the last class, we have studied about the gamete transfer, the process in angiosperms for gamete transfer is pollination. So we have defined what is pollination. We have studied about the different types of pollination, that is autogamy, geitonogamy and xenogamy. After that, we have studied about the agents which cause the pollination. Different agents were there, abiotic and biotic agents. So here now we will be discussing about the adaptations of the plant species to go for particular type of pollination. So different plant species which are dependent upon either wind, either water, on insects, birds. Accordingly, they will be having different types of adaptations to facilitate easy pollination. So we have to start with the first one, that is anemophily. Anemophily means pollination by wind. So pollination by wind, the plant species, they need to have certain characteristics so that the efficient pollination may occur. So here we will study the characteristics which are required for a plant species to go for wind pollination. The first characteristic is that the flowers of that particular plant species need not to be colorful and attractive. So such plant species are having the flowers which are colorless, odorless and nectarless, because they need not to attract any other biotic agents for the pollination process. So their flowers, they are not at all attractive, they are very simple flowers, they are colorless and even they don't have the nectar. Second thing is that as they are dependent upon the wind, the chances are less, or we can say that they are simply relying on the wind for the pollination process. So most of the plant species, they are having a single ovule in the ovary. So it will be very easy for the plant that to get a single pollen so that the ovule can be fertilized. So most of the plant species, they have got a single ovule. The third characteristics of such plants are the anthers, they are well exposed. So if the anthers are well exposed, then only the pollen grains will be exposed to the wind. So the pollen grains will be flown away along with the wind currents. So the anthers, they should be well exposed, they should be open for easy dispersal of pollen grains. Now about the characteristics of pollen grains. The pollen grains, they should be very light, they should be small, they should be dry and they should be non-sticky. Why they should be light and small? So that they can easily flow along with the wind. They should be dry and non-sticky. If they should be sticky, then they will stick to certain regions, so they won't be reaching their destinations. So it is very much required that they should not stick to certain surfaces. So if they are non-sticky and if they are light, they will be blown to long distances and they will land on the stigma. Now next is about the characteristics of stigma. The stigma should be large, hairy and feathery. Why? Because if they should be elongated, if they should be large and if they are feathery, then only they can capture maximum of the pollen grains. For example, in maize plant, you all must have seen the cope of the maize plant. So that cope, it is very large and hairy, so that it can capture maximum of the pollen grains which are coming by the wind. Now next is about the examples of those plants which go for wind pollination. Some examples are coconut, sugarcane, etc. Maize I have already told you. So examples of the plant species which go for anemophily are coconut, sugarcane, maize, etc. So this was all about the characteristics of the plant species which go for anemophily or wind pollination. Now next we will be dealing with the characteristics of plant species which will go for hydrophily. Hydrophily means pollination by water. The plant species which depend upon water for their pollination. So pollination by water is called as hydrophily. Mostly lower aquatic plants, they go for hydrophily. So here two types of hydrophily are there, hypohydrophily and epihydrophily. Hypohydrophily, hypo means below. So hypohydrophily is meant for those plant species which are below the water surface. So as they are below the water surface, the pollen grains, they will be released below and then they will reach the stigma below the water surface. So those plant species where the pollination it occurs below the water surface, they go for hypohydrophily and such pollination is called as hypohydrophily. Now moving to epihydrophily. Epi means above. But here epi simply means that the plants which are present on the surface, if the pollination it occurs on the surface of the water, it is called as epihydrophily. It doesn't mean that the plant species they emerge above the water. So if they are above the water, they can rely on other biotic agents and abiotic agents for the pollination. For example, if the flower is above the water surface, then it can go for wind pollination and it can also go for pollination by insects, birds, etc. So here epihydrophily is for the plants which just float on the surface of water. So examples of this hypohydrophily is Zostera, which is commonly called as sea grasses. They have got ribbon-like pollen grains and by which they can move to long distances and reach the stigma. Example of epihydrophily is Vallisneria. Now here the Vallisneria is a special case. Vallisneria, it is a submerged aquatic plant. So it is present below the water surface. But at the time of reproduction, the flowers they move to the surface. The male flowers they move to the surface and they open up on the surface of water. So they are exposed, their stamens are exposed on the surface of water and then the pollen grains they fall on the water and along with the water currents the pollen grains they are carried to the stigma. At the time of pollination the stigma also comes out of the water, they reach the water surface. So as the pollen grains they move along with the water currents, the pollen grains they will reach the surface of the water and finally reach their destination, that is stigma. And the main thing is that after pollination has occurred, then the fertilization process will take place and after fertilization has occurred, the female flowers they close and again they move down to the water. So that is a special case in case of Vallisneria. Vallisneria go for epihydrophily. But Vallisneria, it is a submerged plant. It is present below the water surface or it is submerged inside the water. But what happens at the time of pollination, at the time of reproduction, the male flowers, they reach on the surface of water, they open on the surface of water and expose the pollen grains. So when the pollen grains are exposed, they are shed on the water surface, and at the same time the female flowers, they also reach on the water surface and open up. So the pollen grains, along with the water current, they move on the surface and reach the receptive stigma. So the pollination will occur, then the fertilization will occur. As soon as the fertilization occurs, the female flowers, they close and they move down the water surface. So this is a special case in case of Vallisneria. Now the characters are mostly same as that of the plant species which go for anemophily. Here also, as the plants, they are dependent upon an abiotic factor or water for pollination. So they need not to be attractive. They need not to attract any biotic agents for the pollination purpose. So here also the flowers, they are colorless, they are odorless and they are nectarless. So they need not to be very attractive, they need not to smell very pleasant, okay, and they need not to possess nectar in order to attract anyone. So they are simply dependent upon water for the pollination process. As I have told, mostly the lower aquatic plants, they go for that. The plants which are emerging above the surface of water, they can even rely on the wind pollination, they can rely on pollination by insects and pollination by birds. Now the most important characteristic of the plant species which go for hydrophily, that is their pollen grains, they are covered by a mucilaginous sheath or a mucilaginous covering. So what is the purpose of this mucilaginous covering? You know that if the pollen grains, they are not covered by mucilaginous covering, then they will become wet, and the second thing is that they will be decayed due to continuous presence in the water. So here one more thing I would like to say, that many of the aquatic plants, pollen grains, in them the exine is absent. So because of this reason also, the pollen grains, they are covered by a mucilaginous covering so that the pollen grains are viable in water for a long time period. So this covering protects the plant or the pollen grains from becoming wet and decaying and help it in remaining viable for a long time period. So this was about the characteristics of the plants which go for hydrophily, and as you all know that they are dependent on water, they are dependent upon the water currents for the pollination process. So here we have discussed about the wind pollination, means the characteristics of the plant species which go for wind pollination and characteristics of the plant species which go for water pollination. Examples of water pollination: Zoostera, Hydrilla and Vallisneria. Now we will deal with the characteristics of the plant species which go for insect pollination. Pollination by insects is called as entomophily. When the plant species, they are dependent upon insects for the pollination process, that is called as entomophily. So now we will be dealing with the characteristics of the plant species which go for insect pollination. Now here the characteristics are there. The first thing is that the flower should be very much attractive to attract the biotic agents. So the plants which go for insect pollination, their flowers are very much attractive. They are colorful, they have got a pleasant smell and they have got nectar. So they are large, they are fragrant flowers. They should be large so that from a distance they should be visible to the insects. And if the flowers they are small, they cluster. Say they cluster to form a large bunch so that from a distance the insects are able to see that flower and become attracted towards that flower. So the characteristics are they should be colorful, they should be fragrant, they should be very much attractive, and they should have nectar. So why they should have nectar? Because when the insects they visit the flowers, they should get some reward. Then only they will be visiting the flowers frequently. So they get the nectar and even the pollen grains as the reward. As I have written here, nectar and pollen grains are the rewards the insects they get from the flowers. You know, the pollen grains, they are very rich source of protein, so it can be consumed by the insects for the nutrition purpose. So when they visit a flower, they should get the nectar as well as the pollen grains as rewards. Now I have explained to you what is this clustered. Then here the pollen grains need to be sticky. Why? Because if they won't be sticky, they won't be able to get stick to the surface of the insects visiting the pollen grains. So it is very much required that the pollen grains must be sticky so that they should stick on the surface of the body of the insects, so that when that insect will visit the next flower or number of flowers, the pollen grains can be carried by the insect so that it can reach its destination, that is the stigma. So these are the characteristics of the plant species which go for insect pollination or which rely on insects for the pollination purpose. Now we will be discussing some examples of this insect pollination. The first example is plant yucca and moth. You know, some species they are unable to complete their life cycle without each other. So they are dependent upon some of the plant species, they are dependent upon the insect, and the insects also depend upon the plant species to complete their life cycle. So here they are having a symbiotic association. Let us see how this occurs. Now in plant yucca and moth, insect, it lays its eggs in the ovary of the plant yucca. So for laying the eggs in the ovary of the plant yucca, it visits number of flowers, and after finding a compatible flower, it bores the ovary and lays the eggs inside the ovary of the plant yucca. In return, the plant yucca gets pollinated by the moth, and what happens inside the ovary, till the seeds are being formed, the insects they also emerge out from the eggs as larvae. So the larvae they feed on the seeds of the plant yucca. In this way, both the plant and the insect species they are dependent upon each other to complete their life cycle. Okay, so the next example is the pollination process in the fig. Here fig and wasp, they are also dependent on each other for completing their life cycle. This fig plant have got a special type of inflorescence, that is Hypanthodium inflorescence. In this inflorescence, you know, the flowers they are in three different positions. On the top position, the male flowers are there. In the middle position, the sterile flowers are there, and below the sterile flowers, the female flowers are there. So this type of inflorescence is called as Hypanthodium inflorescence. So in Hypanthodium inflorescence, the male flowers, they are present on the top. The sterile flowers, they are present in the middle, and the female flowers, they are present at the base. So what happens? For laying the eggs and for collecting the nectar, what happens? The wasp, it visits the fig flowers. So to reach the sterile flowers, it need to go through the male flowers. So when it's time for laying the eggs, this wasp, it enters the sterile flowers. The wasp lays the eggs in the sterile flowers only. So to reach the sterile flowers, it have to move through the male flowers, and in this way the pollen grains will stick on the surface of the wasp. So when it reach the sterile flowers, it have got pollen grains on its surface. At that time, the stigma of the female flowers, they are reaching the sterile flowers. So what will happen? The pollen grains which are stick on the surface of the wasp, it gets attached to the stigma, or it will fall on the stigma of the female flowers. So in this way, this wasp aid the pollination in fig. So they have got a special inflorescence called as hypanthodium inflorescence, in which male flowers are present on the top, sterile flowers in the middle, and female flowers in the bottom. And the wasp, it lays the eggs only in the sterile flowers. So when they move to the sterile flowers, on their body the pollen grains, they got stick, and when they lay the eggs in the sterile flowers, the stigma, it reach to the sterile flowers, and the pollen grains, it fall on the receptive stigma. So in this way the pollination process occurs, and after the eggs of the wasp it hatch, the larva, it feeds on the sterile flowers. So in this way the fig and the wasp, they are also dependent on each other to complete their life cycle. So the two examples we have discussed, that is plant yucca and moth relationship, and fig and wasp relationship. So this was about the characteristics and examples of the plant species which rely on entomophily, or which rely on the insects for the pollination process. Now we will go for certain adaptations for cross-pollination. Means that, you know that the plant species themselves, they do not encourage self-pollination. They discourage self-pollination, and they encourage or go for cross-pollination. What is the reason behind that? The reason is that continuous self-pollination do not result in variations, and it will lead to inbreeding depression. Okay, so in case of plants also, the inbreeding depression is there. Like if continuously the self-pollination occurs, then what will happen? In the next generation, no variations will be there in the offsprings, and the second reason is that it may result in inbreeding depression. So to avoid this inbreeding depression, to prevent this inbreeding depression, and to bring variations in the next generation, the plant species, they discourage self-pollination and they encourage cross-pollination. They have got certain adaptations to encourage the cross-pollination. Let us see what are these adaptations. Number one is dichogamy. Dichogamy simply means that the anthers and the stigma, they mature at different time periods. Okay, if the anther and stigma, they mature at different time periods, there will be no chances of self-pollination. So here two conditions are there. For example, sometimes the pollen grains, they will mature earlier, and sometimes the stigma will mature earlier. So that depends upon the species, or it will vary with species to species. So the plant species in which the pollen grains mature first, or you can say that the anther matures first, that condition is called as protandry. So the condition in which the anthers they mature first or the pollen grains mature first, that is called as protandry, and the other case in which the stigma become receptive first, that is called as protogyny. So if there are changes in the time period in which the anthers and the stigma they mature, definitely there are no chances of self-pollination. Only cross-pollination can occur. So this condition is called as dichogamy, which can be protandry or which can be protogyny. Now moving to the next adaptation, that is heterostyly. In heterostyly, the stamens and the the stamens and the stigma, they are at different positions. As they are at different positions, there are less chances of self-pollination. For example, if the stigma rise above the anther, so the pollen grains cannot fall directly on the stigma. So this type of condition where the anthers and the stigma they are in such a position to avoid self-pollination, such condition is called as heterostyly. Now the third type of adaptation is self-incompatibility. Self-incompatibility, it is a genetic phenomena. In this genetic phenomena, the stigma do not allow the pollen grains from the same plant or from the same flower to form the pollen tube. So it will not accept the pollen grains from the same plant to go for the cross-pollination and to discourage the self-pollination. Okay, so that is self-incompatibility. It is a genetic phenomena in which the stigma do not allow the pollen grains from the same flower or from the same plant to form the pollen tube. So in this way, the self-pollination can be avoided. The last adaptation for cross-pollination is dicliny, dioicy or unisexuality. It is simple that unisexuality means that a plant will be having either the male or the female sex organ. In this case, there are no chances of self-pollination. So this condition is called as dioicy or dicliny, means that the male and female plants will be separate. As they are separate, there are chances only of cross-pollination, not of self-pollination. So here are the adaptations for cross-pollination which are being taken by certain plant species to avoid the self-pollination. The adaptations are dichogamy, heterostyly, self-incompatibility and dicliny, dioicy or unisexuality. So in this class we have studied about the different adaptations of the plant species which go for different types of pollination, that is anemophily, hydrophily and entomophily. We have discussed the special examples also, and after that we have studied the adaptations of the plant species to go for the cross-pollination or to encourage the cross-pollination and discourage the self-pollination process. Thank you so much. I hope you all must have understood the concepts.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like, share and subscribe for more.